Welcome everyone again. This is going to be the final part of this bow review. For those of you turning in, take about 30 seconds to watch this video and you're like, well, what's this guy talking about? He's hardly covering anything. That's because there's been 2 previous videos. Please watch those. I'll load those up first. Seems like no matter what I do, I can't seem to get this down to one video. I guess that's okay. I guess that's what it takes to cover these bows in depth. And I want to do that. I want to provide you guys the best possible description of these bows, reviews of these bows, and at the end at least put some thought behind my final summary of the bow. Pardon me. So to end the discussion on the string angle of this bow. So this bow, being 28 inches axle to axle with a shorter brace height, the string angle is more acute than on most other bows, flagship bows in the market this year and last year. Because of that, when I was shooting the bow, my normal anchor point had to change. And at first, my first thought was, well, I will not shoot a bow where I have to change my anchor. That just is not what I want to do. Well, I got past myself, my own hang-ups, and I thought, okay, I'll try it. The other positive aspects of this bow that I described in video 1 and 2 are so great that I want to give it a good try. So I did change my anchor a little bit, and not a lot, but enough that it wasn't what I was used to. So that is what, like I said in the second video, I added a little kisser here to kind of help remind me. And I might take that off in the future once it becomes more familiar, and, you know, once I get really comfortable with the way this bow points. And there'll be others that say, if you have to change your anchor point at all or change your draw, you shouldn't. That's not the bow for you. And they have a valid point, but you know, I like this bow. I like the other aspects of this bow. And truth be told, my form is not textbook by any means, anyways. So changing it from non-textbook to what actually might be a little more textbook, I kind of have my head more up and down when I'm shooting this bow, due to the fact that I realize no matter what I do, I'm not going to get that same nose contact with this string angle. So I figured, well, I'll put a kisser in there, I'll change it a little bit and go with it, and it seems to work very, very well. At least worked very, very well. I mean, I am grouping better with this bow with the time behind it than I should by any means. So the string angle, although it might feel different, you know, it's up to you whether or not you can live with that, whether or not it causes you to change, and if that change means you shouldn't shoot this bow or you should go ahead and make slight alterations. That is completely up to you as the archer and the bow hunter. So, having covered that last little bit here, I wanted to touch on that. I'm going to give you my final impressions of this bow and what I feel about it. So my final impressions of this bow are that for a bow hunting bow, this bow will do, it will cover 90+% of all shots in the field with ease. For the longer shots, those hunting out west, hunting antelope, hunting caribou, those really flinging them out there at muleys, and I'm talking at distances that are far north of 50 yards, closer to 150 yards. Then in those cases you might not want this bow, or there might be other bows that are better suited for that. But that's not who Mathews makes these bows for. I tend to shoot quite a bit, and I'm not a great shot by any means, but maybe better than average would be the way to describe me. That's not who Mathews is making bows for either, to be honest. And Levi Morgan is not who Mathews is making bows for, at least not this bow. They are making bows for him on the target side. They are making bows that it takes the average guy, the average bow hunter, guy or girl, the least amount of time to become familiar with, to pick up over long distances, or long time distances of not shooting, longer durations I should say of not shooting, because that, for better or worse, is the average bow hunter. And they design a bow that the average bow hunter can pick up, be proficient with out to the majority of their shots quickly, that's maneuverable, that is easy to carry in on public land. Why does that matter? Well, it just means usually those hunting on public land are carrying more stuff with them because they don't have the luxury of a permanent setup. So a very maneuverable bow is an asset to you in that aspect. Something compact, something you can strap to your pack, something you can hold easily with one hand, it's not weighing you down. Those are all good things, and those are who Mathews designs bows for, and they've done very well in the past designing bows for people that fit that description, and they'll do very well in the future designing bows for that type of hunter, and this bow is definitely one of them. This bow is far from perfect. There's trade-offs in everything that you do in hunting and archery, and the trade-offs again is the shortness. Although it's not as big of a trade-off as I thought it would be, and I don't think it's not as big of a trade-off as most people will. It's not as trade-off that a few years ago you would think it would be. Meaning, a few years ago, a shorter bow like this would be an absolute no-go for me. But it has it's come a long way in the way they design these things. So it is definitely the shortness is an acceptable trade-off, but it is a trade-off nonetheless. The brace height, the 6 inches, again doesn't really bother me on this bow. Some bows I don't like that short of a brace height, which by today's standards isn't very short, but I don't normally I like a 7-inch or 6.5. This bow is 6. Isn't bad, but again, it's not as forgiving as a 7. So if that's what you need or want, that's what you have to look at. A couple other things. The finish is, like I've spoken to in the other videos, the finish is very good for a dipped finish, but it is not a color fusion. So if that is what you are wanting, and normally, to be honest, I've been spoiled by color fusion bows. So I look at this and I like the pattern. I really like the Evolve 2 pattern. But the application of that pattern, I definitely can instantly tell a difference between that and a color fusion style bow. And the color fusion style bow is always going to look better. The strings and cables on this. Mathews Zebra strings and cables for years have not been considered nearly as good as, well, none of the factory strings are as good as the aftermarket. And the Zebra for years have been kind of knocked on their performance side and durability side. This, I'll say that it hasn't twisted much on me, just a tiny bit so far, in about 400 or 500 arrows. Has twisted just a tiny bit. The peep rotation, meaning twist. One thing I did notice though, and it's going to be very hard to show in a camera, but I don't know if, yeah, it'd be very tough to see, but in the grooves in that cam and around there, the serving, there's a tiny bit of serving separation. Will that matter? I doubt it. I don't think that's a big deal, but it is something to note, and it's something I would not accept if I were buying these strings aftermarket and put them on. And notice that, because this was probably within 100, 150 shots, I noticed that starting to just a tiny bit of separation, but it's there, and that normally I wouldn't accept in a custom built string, but in a factory string, although I'm not liking it, it's acceptable. I don't think it'll affect performance in any way, but again, it's something to note. So drawing and shooting, so those are the things if there's a negative of these bows or a hold up on these bows, that would be it. I don't think the dampener down here affects balance nearly as much as just the overall build of it, but it is whatever the cause of it is, it's extremely dead in the hand bow. And a very silent bow as well. Those two for this bow go neck and neck. Overall impressions, I think this bow will be a very big seller. I think it does what they're designed it to do, what the Mathews engineers designed it to do. I think it'll be a very high performing bow. It keeps these cams, these cross stitcher cams, in this setting or this setup are very efficient. They're very powerful. It's moving these arrows out at more than enough speed at 2970 pounds with my hunting weight arrows to handle anything at all in North America without a thought of 480, 500 grains. Crank this all the way down, get an extra twist or two, get it to 74, 75 pounds, and you give me 1,000 grain arrow, 800,000 grain arrow, and I will hunt Cape buffaloes with this bow all day long. I'd like to hunt Cape buffaloes with this bow all day long, although that probably won't happen. But what I'm saying is this bow has the ability to do that. as far as speed. You drop the, 60, if your shoulders are hurting and you want a 60-pound bow, this bow is amazing at 60 pounds as well. So all the things I said will apply at 60, obviously with 10 pounds less giddy up in it. Good bow, good overall bow. I think it'll perform very well. It is a very quiet bow, very efficient bow, very vibration-free bow, and easy to shoot well at normal bow hunting distances. So that's it. This is the 2018 Mathews Triax. Hopefully you can stick through all 3 reviews. I know it's quite a ways, it takes quite a while, and I'm going to keep working to make these more efficient, but I want to give you the in-depth knowledge that, that you won't hear on a 2-minute "this bow is sick" soundbite. So there you go. Once again, this is Outdoor Analytics. Please look to subscribe if you like it. Please let me know if you don't, and how I should improve these things to get better. And I will do those. I'll incorporate those in future videos and bring you more tips and tactics using critical thinking, analytical skills, and just an overall more in-depth presentation to you, the audience, than you will find anywhere else on any of these reviews I've seen so far. So there you have it. Have a good night, and have a good hunt.